All right, good afternoon. Welcome to SCAG's Toolbox Tuesday session featuring data tools and research from the Latino Policy and Politics Institute. My name is Annalie Ekman. I'm a senior planner at SCAG, and I'll be introducing today's session. And while we introduce the session, I encourage you all to introduce yourselves and say hi to each other in the chat. We love an active chat, so feel free to say hi. On the slide before you, there are some meeting logistics items. This session is anticipated to take about an hour and a half. It will be recorded, and all participant lines will be muted when you enter the Zoom. There will be a Q&A session, several Q&A sessions actually throughout the presentation. So we encourage you, if you have a question, to type it in the chat or raise your hand during that session, and we'll answer as many of them as possible. And then again, today's meeting will be recorded, and the presentations and session recording will be posted on the SCAG website and sent to everyone who registered for the event. At this time, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. We are currently on occupied and unceded land of Indigenous peoples who are and have been the traditional caretakers of the land in this region. So I'm calling in from Gabrieleno, Tongva, and Hachiman land. And if you haven't already, I encourage you all to visit some resources that we'll share in the chat right now. There you go. Thanks, Jeannie. And then, as this session is part of our equity series for Toolbox Tuesdays, I'd like to do a little bit of framing in SCAG's equity efforts. So in July 2020, our regional council adopted a resolution affirming its commitment to advancing justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout Southern California. This led to a working definition of racial equity and the Racial Equity Early Action Plan, which includes 4 goals and 3 strategies to advance racial equity through SCAG's policies, practices, and activities. One of those goals is to encourage racial equity in local planning practices, which is what we aim to do through these equity-focused Toolbox Tuesday sessions. So some of those sessions are listed on this slide. There are so many other Toolbox Tuesdays that we would encourage you to go check out. And you can access all of them in the link in the chat. And with that, at this time, I'm going to launch a quick poll. This is just to wrap up the introduction and then also give you all a chance to introduce yourselves in a group manner. There's a question about what kind of organization you're coming from, where geographically you might be coming from, and then how familiar you are with demographic data, as this is sort of the focus of our session today. So I'll give everyone about 30 more seconds to fill out the poll. And then also several more people have joined us since I started, so welcome. We're just filling out a poll, and you're welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat if you haven't already. I mean, if you have to, you're welcome to introduce yourself again or say hi to someone you might know. All right, we have about 80% completed, so I'm gonna end the poll. Oh, we had one more pop in, thanks. Okay, so most people are joining us from local, regional, county government. 3 people from something else. I would love to know where you're joining from, if you're something else especially. And then most people are within California, and we have a lot of occasional demographic data users, and sometimes need a refresher on where to get data, which is perfect because this is where our guest speakers come in. And I'm so honored to introduce our featured guests for this session from the UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Institute, which addresses the most critical domestic policy challenges facing Latinos and other communities of color through research, advocacy, mobilization, and leadership development to propel policy reforms that expand genuine opportunity for all Americans. Misael Galdámez is the LPPI's Senior Research Analyst for Economic Opportunity and Social Mobility, where he supports the development, management, and execution of the Institute's research portfolio. Misael is a researcher through and through and has demonstrated his strong interest in workers' wages and inclusive economic growth by researching California's Hispanic essential worker population at Milken Institute's Center for Regional Economics, developing a methodology for living wage estimations in Mexico City while at MIT, and researching remittances and migration in and from Latin America with the International Monetary Fund. Welcome, Misael. And second, we have Gabriela Carmona, who is a graduate policy fellow with LPPI, where she fosters external stakeholder partnerships, coordinates advocacy opportunities, oversees policy analysis, and leads LPPI's research on Latino representation in government offices. Gabriela's passion for combating social and economic injustice is demonstrated through her previous work at the New American Economy, a bipartisan research and advocacy organization dedicated to immigration reform. Gabriela is currently working at LPPI part-time as she pursues a master's in urban and regional planning at UCLA. Welcome, Gabriela. And with that, I will hand it over to Misael and Gabriela to take it away.
Okay. Do we share the slides? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Annalie, for the introduction, and good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today. It's a pleasure to be with you. As Annalie mentioned, I'm Misael Galdámez, and I am a senior research analyst at UCLA's Latino Policy and Politics Institute. I'm also trained as a city planner, and so I'm excited to share this space with you, this Toolbox Tuesday, and especially the Latino Data Hub. I'm joined by my colleague, UCLA LPPI policy analyst, Gabriela Carmona, and a soon-to-be graduate of UCLA's Master in Urban and Regional Planning program. So before we start today, I just want to introduce the UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Institute briefly. At UCLA LPPI, we strive to create a brighter future for Latinos and other communities of color through research, advocacy, mobilization, and leadership development. And we hope to propel policy reforms that expand genuine opportunity for our communities through these strategies. In our time with you today, we want to share LPPI's latest release, the Latino Data Hub. Most of us here today are city or regional planners, maybe even county planners or state government, and we know the importance of data informing our daily work. We might be working on community plans or long-range transportation plans, and we need quality data to ensure we're meeting the needs of our residents and constituents within our communities. And we also need data to tell our communities' rich stories and their histories, and to ensure that we can tell those stories to future generations. Similarly, UCLA LPPI was founded on the idea that Latinos are not a monolith, and that through accurate data, we can change limited narratives about who Latinos are. So Latinos are multiracial, they're multi-ethnic, they have a broad spectrum of lived experiences, and we believe that with reliable and disaggregated data, policymakers can design solutions to long-standing inequities and create lasting change. So the Latino Data Hub is kind of the result of years of work, and it is the solution to what we think is the need for more disaggregated data on Latino communities, and we're really proud to be sharing that with you today. So before we begin, I just want to share a brief video that we've produced on the Latino Data Hub.
The Latino Data Hub, a game-changing data discovery engine that will revolutionize how we harness the power of reliable and comprehensive data to empower and lift the Latino community in the United States. With its vibrant culture, unwavering resilience, and unparalleled contributions, the Latino community, representing one of the largest and most dynamic communities in the nation, is poised to achieve greater heights than ever before. This powerful data discovery tool goes beyond eye-catching statistics, providing a deeper understanding of the very diverse realities, aspirations, and contributions of Latinos. The Latino Data Hub empowers policymakers, community-based organizations, philanthropists, media outlets, the private sector, and anyone who needs access to solid and thorough data to address the opportunities, challenges, and disparities faced by Latinos in the United States. Behind every data point lies a unique story and lived experience of Latinos in America. It fosters empathy, breaks stereotypes, and encourages a broader and more diverse portrayal of the Latino community. By bringing together all stakeholders, this collaborative platform can help drive positive change. The Latino Data Hub provides the knowledge and insights needed to make informed decisions and drive positive and lasting outcomes. It highlights the economic potential and importance of the Latino population in driving inclusive growth and prosperity in the United States. Visit latinodatahub.org and discover the power of data. Discover groundbreaking data from sources you can trust with easy access.
Well, thank you all for watching. Just by way of agenda, we'll be talking a little more about the Data Hub. We'll have a short Q&A, and then we'll have a demonstration of our tool. And second Q&A after that, if there are specific questions about the data set and how to use the tool. And we'll conclude with the research showcase by my colleague, Gabriela. So as the video mentioned and showed, the Latino Data Hub is a user-friendly data platform that provides advocates, decision makers, and the media with insights to make informed decisions to improve the well-being of Latino communities across the United States. Using the data science expertise of the UCLA LPPI team, we leverage data collected by the American Community Survey, which is the largest annual survey collected by the Census Bureau. We at the UCLA LPPI team do all the coding, data management, and survey weighting to create accurate and reliable estimates on a wide range of indicators for Latinos and Latino well-being at the national, state, and county levels. And in an upcoming update to the tool, we're also planning to add congressional districts. So why create a Latino Data Hub? As I mentioned earlier, Latinos are often treated as a monolith, and you don't have to look too deep into news stories to see that we're often thought of a consolidated group of people. And while we do share elements of our lived experiences, there's a lot of diversity, complexity, and difference in who Latinos are. And so the Latino Data Hub wants to highlight those differences and make that available through data. We also want this data to go towards more equitable policies. There is a lack of reliable and actionable disaggregated data about Latinos, and especially at different levels of geography. And so we want to be able to better diagnose and tailor policies to address those inequities. Last, we also want to empower our own communities to fuel lasting change. As the video noted, this Latino Data Hub tool is for everyone. It's for media, it's for philanthropists, it's for policymakers, but it's also for community members. It's for people who are just wanting to get involved in their own community and have data to be able to show their point, quantitatively. And so we want this tool to be in the hands of community members in our communities to fuel lasting change. So what makes the Latino Data Hub unique? First is the breadth of information. We provide over 130 well-being indicators across 10 different issue areas. These issue areas range from transportation to child well-being to income to demographics. And in the demonstration, we'll show you some examples of the valuable data that we have. The second is that we provide a depth of information through data disaggregation. And what we mean by data disaggregation is being able to break down Latinos into various groups, various geographies, depending on certain characteristics. So for example, through data disaggregation, we can break down Latinos into smaller subpopulations. We can look at Latinos by race, by sex, by national origin, nativity, by their race, importantly, and other key variables that have historically been used to exclude. But this data disaggregation also illuminates differences. Through this fine-grained data, we can highlight the diversity and range of Latinos' lived experiences. And as we often say at UCLA LPPI, Latinos are not a monolith. The third thing is that it's very easy to use. It's a user-friendly interface. It doesn't require data science expertise. Y es bilingüe también. So you can also use the tool in Spanish or share the tool with any members of your community who might not speak English and whose first language is Spanish. The last thing that I'll note here is that the data queries and visualizations are extremely customizable to meet your own needs as a community member, as a government representative, and you can create impactful and beautiful data visualizations very easily. So we at the UCLA LPPI team are very excited about this first of its kind platform and all the potential it holds. But before we begin with a demonstration, we just want to pause, and I know that was a lot of information, and answer any questions that there might be in the audience. If there's no questions, I can keep going. Okay, so we'll turn to a demonstration of the tool. And I'm going to share my screen and web browser to do so. Okay. So you should be able to see Latino Data Hub tool on my browser. And the first thing that we need to do to go to the Latino Data Hub is to go to latinodatahub.org. And this home screen offers easy access to the main features and navigation elements of the tool, including the ability to continue in Spanish up here in this top right menu by clicking Español, or up here, read recent research published by the Latino Data Hub team. If we scroll down to the right here of the center panel, you can find a series of tutorial videos. You can just click one to watch it, and it'll walk you through the basics and through the advanced features of the tool. I also mentioned that we offer data on 10 different issue areas. You can access them either up here on the top or down here in the center navigation panel. And the issue areas contain data related to specific topics. Here we can see some examples: health insurance, housing, digital technology, child well-being, etc. However, during our demonstration, I want to highlight the custom graphs feature, which enables access to all the indicators that we have, but more importantly, also allows users to save and share their data queries. And if you're going to be using the Latino Data Hub regularly, we invite you to create an account, which will help you take advantage of the full functionalities of the Latino Data Hub, and you can also save your work. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to be log in. So I'll click login in the top right panel, enter my email, and click login. Okay, so now I'm logged in. The next thing I'm going to do is click on custom graphs so that we can start making our own visualization. We'll go first to custom graphs and then click map to start making a visualization. Now, once you've selected map, you can select a specific indicator from this drop-down menu, which provides the full list of over 130 indicators. You can also type if you know what you are looking for or what you're interested in, or you can scroll to browse. In this case, since we're a group of planners, let's imagine that we're interested in what % of Latinos take public transportation to work. So we'll select public transportation. And now we can see a map of public transportation rates for Latinos by state and a bar chart here in the center right panel that ranks the states by the percentage of Latinos who take public transportation and the US average as well. You'll notice in the map that some states are colored gray. That means that there's insufficient data for those states to produce an estimate. When we click on a particular state, since most of us are in California, let's imagine we're interested in California, we find that California is ranked the 13th highest in Latinos taking public transportation to work. This little window also provides some detailed information on what this data is showing. So in this case, 4% or 242,000 Latino workers ages 16 plus take public transportation to work, which is helpful for us. And I want to note that if you're unclear about the indicator's definition or what some data might mean, you can scroll up to the title here and click this I, and you can find notes here for clarification. In this case, this data is showing the number and percentage of individuals who take public transportation to work, excluding those who take taxis. And this is for everybody ages 16 plus. So this is how we get started with making a data visualization using the Latino Data Hub. But this aggregate data might not be as useful to us as more local and fine-grained data. So if we wanted to further refine our data based on geography, what we would start to do is click here, starting visualization type, and change that to bar. And let's imagine that we're interested in public transportation trends in LA County. As I mentioned, first we'd click this bar here to change it to a bar chart type. And I want to note here first that by default, when you go into a bar chart, the Latino Data Hub will produce a visualization that compares the data for Latinos to other racial and ethnic groups, as well as the overall population. So here we see that in the US, 6% of US Latinos take public transportation to work, compared to 4% of the entire US population. To get to county level data, first we'd click Customize here, and we'll see a variety of options, filters, and breakdowns. In this case, since we're interested in a county geography, first we'd need to select the state. In this case, that's California, and then the county options become available. Next, we'll select Los Angeles County and click Submit. So now we've loaded LA County, and what we can start to see are some differences between racial and ethnic groups. We see that Latinos are more likely to take public transportation than other groups, 7% of LA County Latinos, with the exception of Black Angelenos who take 8% of take public transportation to work. Now let's say we know something about the Latino community in Los Angeles County, and we know that there are differences within them. And let's say we want to know, how do Latinos vary in public transportation rates by descent groups or their specific Latino country of ancestry? What we would do is, again, click Customize. And then here in this comparison group, we would select Latino descent groups. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're unclear about what something means, you can click on this I and find a description. Here, it would take you to another window that would give you more information on Latino descent groups. So we'll select Latino descent groups as our comparison group and click Submit. So now we see the same data point, but for Mexicans, Central Americans, South Americans, and other groups. We can also add more groups down here. So specific South American descent groups, for instance, Argentinians, Bolivians, Chileans, Colombians, and specific Central American groups. For our example here today, I'm going to select Guatemalans and I'm going to select Salvadorans because I know that there are large populations of them in LA County. So now that we've added those groups, you can see what we mean by data disaggregation. There's a lot of difference in Latino public transportation rates in LA County. For example, Guatemalan Angelenos are over twice as likely to take public transit as Latinos overall. 15% of Guatemalan workers take public transportation to work in LA County, compared to just 7% of all Latino workers. The group that's least likely in LA County is South American Latinos. Only 4% of South American Latinos take public transportation to work. I do want to flag these NAs here as well. In those cases, as it notes here, those have insufficient data to produce an estimate. If you're a data nerd like us, we have some sample size restrictions that we put on the data, and we don't produce anything that has less than 100 observations for our users. So for this data, you can also access it as a table format. If we click this table banner, and it presents the data and comparison groups that you've selected in a table format. and you can copy to the clipboard by clicking this button, or download to a CSV in case you want to make your own visualizations offline. Another great feature of the Latino Data Hub is the ability to further disaggregate by sex. So we're going to take our same groups and look at them through a gender lens. So one more time, we'll click Customize, and we'll click here where it says Include Sex Comparison and click Submit. So now we can easily see transit ridership differences between men and women. If we scroll down to the bottom of this chart, we see that the blue bars are females and the teal bars are males. Interestingly, at least for us, the one trend that we see is that across all Latino groups, women are much more likely to take public transportation than men. And almost 1 in 5 Guatemalan women in Los Angeles County takes public transit to work, which is the highest of all groups. I want to flag that we tried to make this interface as friendly as possible. We built a lot of guiding features to allow users to interpret the data correctly. So as I've been doing, if you highlight a bar, it will give you a sentence description about what that data is showing. So here, 18% of Guatemalan female workers ages 16 plus in LA County take public transportation to work. So this is how we get to more fine-grained data on Latinos in LA County, having both descent groups and sex. The last thing that I want to highlight for this Toolbox Tuesday is some of the advanced features, which are called filters. Now, filters allow our users to calculate indicators for very specific population groups or subsets. That could be on a variety of factors that you might be interested. That might be age, that might be income, that might be citizenship, employment status, etc. To get to the filters, we would click Customize and then click this right button here that says Filters. As a default, all the filter options are pre-selected for us, and we unselect specific options to remove that population from our analysis. So as far as public transit goes, we tend to see in data, generally speaking, that lower income users are more likely to use public transportation. So for our example today, let's look at groups with lower incomes. In this case, we want to look at those with household incomes below 50,000. And so we'll unclick the 2 higher boxes. Then we'll click Submit, and we'll have that data available for us. If you ever lose track of what data you're looking at or which data set you're working with, when you apply a filter, this title up here will update to include what you're looking at. So for us, we're looking at commuters who take public transportation to work in LA County. We're looking by Latino descent group and sex, and we've included this additional filter of household income. So we're now looking at workers making less than $50,000 a year. Excuse me, households making less than $50,000 a year. I do want to note that if you use an advanced filter, you should use caution. It does change the universe of analysis, and so the interpretation of the data will change as well. Here we see again, the data changes a lot, right? Now, 1/4 of Guatemalan female workers in LA County take public transportation to work, which highlights the importance of public transportation, especially for Guatemalan women, and especially those with lower incomes in LA County. So if you want to create a profile to make your data, or to make your data and your charts, you can save all your work. If I were to exit and log out now, this chart would be saved for me. And additionally, you can add more visualizations below by clicking this Add Graph button. And you can also delete by clicking the Delete Graph button. If you run into any obstacles while you are creating the data, you can share your experience with us, or any questions you have on this with this purple, or excuse me, this pink question mark button at the bottom. And that will open up a contact us form that you can tell us about your experience and any changes that you'll have. And looking again at the data that we've produced, you can also export your data. This button towards the top allows you to save your image as a PNG. You can make your image full screen, and you can even share a link to your visualization. And as I noted earlier, you can export your data either by copying to the clipboard or using the CSV. We welcome you to use the visualizations directly from the website. We welcome you to download the data and make your own visualizations with your own templates and make your own charts. The only thing we ask is that you cite the Latino Data Hub properly. So this concludes our brief showcase of the tool. We're happy to answer any questions during our Q&A.
We do have a couple of questions that are popping up in the chat. Melanie Smith asks, is county level as fine-grained as the data gets? And talks about how the Latino population is not evenly distributed through an enormous county such as LA, even, the SCAG region as well. So maybe you could talk about like population sizes at the city level and and maybe if there's like future plans for the Latino Data Hub to get into cities.
Yeah, that's a great question. The Latino Data Hub is limited by the data set that we're using, which is the American Community Survey, and especially, as I mentioned earlier, the size of the Latino population and the number of observations for that. So at the moment, the finest geography that we have available is county level geography, but we are looking to add congressional districts. Those are different than like city level data points, but they are a different level of analysis. It might be more helpful for, say, advocacy efforts, especially at the legislative level. I think we're always open to feedback and iteration of the tool. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely get in contact with us and talk to us about it. But I think at the moment, what we're next working on is a congressional district geography.
Yeah, Donald Nielsen also asked about like other geographies that the data might be available at. But I have a question about so this is using 2021 ACS 5-year estimates. Are you
Correct.
using the 5-year just to like get a larger population size? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's correct. So the 5-year ACS file has the largest sample sizes that we can draw on. And especially, as I noted in the demonstration of the tool, one of the powerful features is that you can continually disaggregate and get to smaller subgroups and populations. But in order to do so, you need a lot of data. And the ACS provides the best and most up-to-date data with the biggest sample size. So currently using the 2021 data, I do want to note that we're currently in the process of updating the data behind the tool. The Census Bureau recently released the 2022 5-year American Community Survey data. We're currently working to integrate that into the ACS and update the data that's there. And we're hoping that will be available by April 2024.
Awesome. Is there going to be a way to do a trend analysis? Or are you just gonna like replace 2021 data?
We are currently replacing the data. So the data, instead of being 2021 after the April update, will just be the 2022 data. However, we're in constant iteration with the Latino Data Hub. And so we're currently in the planning process to think about how we can continue to add more data and have trend analysis. I think that our tool is approximately 6 months old, and it took about 2 years to get to the point that we are now. And so now, as we've built this tool and have a good base of users and are starting to collect information about their needs, we're adding additional features as they become apparent. So that is something that we're hoping to do in a future iteration, is to be able to show trend analysis for different data sets. And so stay tuned, subscribe to the newsletter and to the updates for the Latino Data Hub so you can stay up to date with the upcoming changes.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. And speaking of like users, I appreciate that you could like easily make an account, and that allows LPPI to kind of keep track of like how the data is being used and like I don't know if it's like tracking what it's being used for, but have you seen or heard from any of your users so far? I know it's only been 6 months, but like any like examples of how it's being used?
That's a great question. Gabriela, do you have any insight on how I have a couple examples, but I'm curious if you have some insight.
Not any insight on how it's being used currently, but just that we are trying to get on the ground to encourage people to use it in different ways. And so we actually do have some programs in the works to work with CBOs and grassroots organizations to get them to use the tool in their advocacy campaigns. And so that's something to stay tuned if you're interested in how the data is being leveraged.
Yeah, and I think additionally, we as the Latino Policy and Politics Institute are also trying to use Latino Data Hub in our own research work So for example, Thursday, we're releasing a report on Latina educational attainment in the United States. There's like a very detailed look at how those trends have changed over time, but also how they vary by different aspects of Latina identities, for example, by their nativity or whether they're a veteran. And so we're hoping that these really fine-grained data points can then serve in changing media narratives, but also in storytelling and also in policy reform and legislation reform.
Awesome. Yeah, I can see like the way you or the way it's been structured, like pulling directly an image and like sticking it in a PowerPoint, for instance, like for a staff report or like a I'm thinking about like planning approaches, but yeah, and we're, you know, SCAG is constantly thinking about like dashboards and like ways to share like live data. It looks like that there's a way to like embed, or is that that link just a link to your like saved graphic?
Yeah, it's just a link to your saved graphic.
Okay, cool. Is there a way to embed, or like I'm not
I don't think so that at the moment, but that is something that we could look into adding. You know, I was thinking about the geography question as I was reading it again. So just to add some like further clarification, the smallest we could feasibly get would be groups of or places with populations of 100,000. And I think that's because those are the PUMAs that, or the public use microdata area that the Census Bureau uses to create estimates. So if we wanted to get the city level data, realistically, the best we could do for this data set would probably be to be looking at PUMAs and to look at places with geography, with populations of about 100,000. If you notice in some of the county instances, when I was scrolling through LA County, some of the counties are combined and most of them tend to be like northern or central California, where the counties have very small populations. And the reason we do that is to have enough data to produce estimates and to get to that population of 100,000. So that's just a little more detail on how the geography works. It's more a limitation of the data necessarily than kind of like the interest of us as the Latino Data Hub. If it were up to us, we'd produce as much data as we could up to whatever geography is needed. That's just what the data set allows for us to do.
Yeah, oftentimes with SCAG, we're like aggregating to the whole regional level so that we have that appropriate sample size to be accurate about the way we share data. Cool. Are there any other questions from the audience? Looks like we might be ready to move on. Oh, one more from Donald.
If you could provide a little more context, Donald, that would be really helpful. Are you talking about like the place designation that the census uses? I think that if we were using the PUMAs, they're just aggregated based on the census tract level and then gone up. So I think for PUMAs, they often cross different jurisdictions. And I'm not entirely sure how the Census Bureau actually defines those. But I think, you know, for instance, I live in the city of Hawthorne. There is like unincorporated areas very close to me, Del Air or Lenox. And so looking at the PUMA for Hawthorne, that likely includes those as well. So those would be included as one place if we were to look at that specific area of Los Angeles County. I hope that's helpful. Yeah, so in the case that you're mentioning, if you're using the, not for the Latino Data Hub, I should make clear that as I'm speaking, the Data Hub doesn't provide information below county level at the moment. And we will look at congressional districts. But if you're looking at the ACS data, and you were going to look at the public use microdata area for, say, the city of Oxnard, it would likely include that unincorporated and adjacent community as well in that PUMA. But you'd have to look at the specific map for that. There's no time frame at the moment for smaller geographies, but I think for congressional districts, that will probably be coming within the next year or so.
There are also, I mean, there just want to elevate that there are like census data like resources that maybe we could share that like you can go and extract the ACS data for like the census tracts that you're thinking about. But just note like the disaggregation that is offered in the Latino Data Hub is like it's not able to be offered at that level because of the population size. But there are numbers for it. You can go in and look at it and yeah, check it out. Well, if there are no more questions, we can go ahead and move on.
Yeah, I'll kick us off if we could get the slide deck back up. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for the great questions. I hope we can continue to get the ball rolling with some more interesting and fun research that LPPI has. So in addition to the Data Hub, LPPI actually has a wealth of research being conducted by institute staff and a network of academic faculty across the country. And so with the time that we have left today, just wanted to take a moment to spotlight some of our current and upcoming research that might serve as some helpful resources for you all. So at LPPI, we believe that every issue is a Latino issue, which in practice means that our research really tries to shine a light on a broad swath of domestic policy issues that impact Latinos and other communities of color. So our portfolio currently covers 5 broad topic areas: economic opportunity and mobility, health, immigrant rights, democracy and voting rights, and then health, climate and sustainability. And we think of ourselves as a research think tank. And so all of our research is applied and really tries to make it a point to provide recommendations for policy actions that should be taken at various local, federal jurisdictions to rectify the disparities that we spotlight. And so to give you all a sense of what this looks like, we've curated a short list of reports that we've conducted within the SCAG region. And so starting with one of the most pressing issues in California today, housing and homelessness. This past December, our faculty expert, Dr. Melissa Chinchilla, and her collaborators published a brief that examines the scale and characteristics of doubled-up homelessness of Latinx in LA County. Whereas traditional conceptualizations of homelessness often think about folks who are living in shelters or unsheltered on the street, doubled-up homelessness is defined as the practice of sharing and overcrowding in housing due to economic hardship or housing loss. And so prior studies have actually suggested that this practice is especially common amongst Latinx individuals who are often underrepresented amongst those more traditional counts, despite experiencing high levels of poverty and inequality. And so using the American Community Survey by the census, Dr. Chinchilla and collaborators estimated doubled-up counts and with the study found that there was a huge severity of doubled-up homelessness in LA County, finding that individuals were 3.5 times more likely to experience being doubled up compared to being sheltered or unsheltered. Among the doubled up, Latinx were the largest share, accounting for nearly 77%. And these rates were higher, particularly among segments of the Latino population. So those who identified as American Indian or Alaska Native had doubling up rates of about 7.5% and 7.2% amongst non-citizens. And then just another comparative point here to really hammer this in is that non-Hispanic whites actually had a 1.3% rate of doubling up, so way lower. And together, these findings really suggest the need to first engage with community-based organizations that are kind of outside of the typical spectrum of homelessness services as well as think about developing housing and financial assistance programs that can better leverage a more expanded definition and eligibility to include both non-citizens, but also the doubled up. And of course, the rise of homelessness is also integrally tied to the greater housing affordability crisis. We know that across the country, Latinos and other communities of color continue to lag behind their white counterparts when it comes to home ownership. And so to try to bridge this divide, recent LPPI research conducted by UCLA professor Jose Loya and his graduate student Miguel examined the mortgage industry's central role in driving the stratification. So they used data from 2019 and 2018 pre-pandemic from the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, and found that Black individuals and Latinos with excellent creditworthiness were just as likely to obtain a high-cost loan as white and Asian applicants with poor creditworthiness. And moreover, Black individuals and Latinos with excellent creditworthiness were denied at twice the rate as white applicants and Asian with similar credit scores when it came to applying for a mortgage. And so that meant that Black individuals and Latinos with excellent credit had about a 13% chance of being denied compared to 5% for white and Asian applicants. These findings really point to the need to reform how banks weigh risk in bank mortgage underwriting processes, but also the need for more targeted down payment assistance and shared home equity programs to expand home ownership among minoritized communities of color. And since homeownership is out of reach for many Latinos living in Los Angeles, our work has also explored how Latinos are faring in the county's rental market. So ahead of the end of the COVID-era rent freezes and support earlier this month that happened on Feb 1st, our staff at LPPI actually used the Data Hub to dive into the characteristics of renters and how they're facing housing burden costs in LA County. So overall, we found that more than half of the Latino renters were categorized as housing cost burden. And among Latinos, Afro-Latino renters in particular had the highest rates of severe housing cost burden. So housing cost burden is spending at least 30% of your income on housing, but severe housing cost burden is spending upwards of 50%. And so among Latino renters, 28% were categorized as severely cost burden, but among Afro-Latinos, that share jumped up to 32%. And lastly, among descent groups, just kind of diving into the granularity of demographics here, we found that non-Latino renters had higher rates of housing cost burden compared to their citizen counterparts. And this gap was actually largest for Latinos of South America, with Latino US born and non-citizens having about a 12% percentage point difference in their rent burden. And so alongside the housing crisis and the rental crisis, California is also grappling with the existential threat of climate change. And so in as many of you might know, in a proactive response, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, LADWP, launched its LA 100 equity strategy, a comprehensive analysis of the technical feasibility and necessary investments to transition to 100% renewable energy in an equitable way. Building upon this work, UCLA LPPI staff partnered with some like-minded institutes at UCLA to develop a report to better understand the challenges that might be faced by small ethnic-owned businesses in Los Angeles during this transition. And so through a survey of over 500 different businesses, this report had a number of insights, but just to highlight a few for you, they really emphasize that there is a dire need to improve awareness of what this transition to 100% renewable energy looks like and would mean for small businesses. Only 1 in 10 small ethnic-owned businesses stated that they were aware of the likely impacts. But there's also an opportunity for a lot of improvement and gain from a green transition, as we found that 23% of the survey respondents indicated that they were already experiencing a number of challenges in paying their utility bills. Furthermore, these businesses were also already facing the brunt of climate change. So over half of the survey respondents stated that climate change had an observable negative impact on their business, either due to increasing cost in operating or impacts on their revenue and customer base. And based on these findings, the report outlined that LADWP should be thinking about partnering with business serving CBOs and other trusted organizations and agencies to provide technical assistance and engage these small businesses, as well as collecting more robust data on energy usage, energy burden, and the location of where these small businesses are to prioritize their outreach. And so before closing out, I had I just want to take a moment to flag 2 other projects that we're currently working on that I think might be of interest to many of you. The first is actually a project being led by Misael, who started this call on Latino-centered planning, which will be helping to shed light on the structural mechanisms that have helped Latino barrios in Oakland, San Isidro, San Diego, and Los Angeles to deal with the COVID-19 in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. This project will be diving deep into varying levels of economic investment and Latino-centered infrastructure that did and didn't protect these Latino communities over the last couple of years. And this will also really entail just looking into the city's social and cultural infrastructure, as well as the economic development actors and the government representatives that played a role in the community's planning efforts. We're really in the early stages of this project, so look out for more details in the next year. But if you are interested or have any questions, feel free to reach out to Misael if you have any questions about the project. And then the second project that I wanted to briefly speak to is some community air quality monitoring that we're analyzing in Pacoima. And Pacoima is in the San Fernando Valley, for those who are unfamiliar. Pacoima is a majority Latino working class community that grapples with a lot of pollution, both from the neighboring 5 freeway, but also the Whiteman Airport. And so researchers at the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation, alongside LPPI, have conducted an initial study on air quality in Pacoima by analyzing the fine particulate matter pollution from 5 different sensors. And these sensors are actually managed by a local grassroots environmental justice organization called Pacoima Beautiful, who've been an active partner in this work. And so this report is in the works. So look out for a brief in the next couple months. Stay tuned for that. And of course, if you're also interested, I'm happy to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to me and Misael, and I'm happy to connect you with the folks on our team who are leading this effort. And so I do see that there's a hand raised. So I think we'll just open it up to Q&A now. And feel free if you have any questions about this research, any other research LPPI might be doing, or any lingering questions that you have on the Data Hub as well. And we can jump back into that. Thank you.
Lisbeth, you want to voice your question?
No, sorry, I meant to bring my hand down. I was just direct messaging Misael.
Are there any questions from the audience? Donald.
Hi, thank you very much. I was just wondering, for the transition to small, or on one of the last slides that you had, it was centering small ethnic businesses in Los Angeles for just transition. And you were talking a little bit about the transition to renewable energy and how that's going to be impacting businesses. So in Ventura County, we're actually we're actively considering working on a renewable energy program, and kind of like where these facilities can be locating. And then at the same time, we're also working on its new area plan that's focusing on one of our largest Latino population areas as well. So I was wondering, would you be able to kind of speak a little bit more about that particular aspect of your of the Latino Hub, or that particular slide a little bit, maybe a little bit more information, and if there's any potential tools for us to for cities or counties to use?
Yeah. I feel like I have 2 immediate responses to that. So you had said Ventura County. So the study that we did was specifically in LA, because it was in response to LA's 100% renewable energy transition. And so unfortunately, I don't know to the extent that maybe it's helpful to kind of get a sense of what people are saying in the LA County region, I think could be transferable. And thank you, Misael. I was going to share the report. The report itself kind of outlines some of those key findings further. It seems like also the additional question you had was on data sources. And so the Data Hub that we have doesn't have anything on the environment just yet, but it is something that we've actively gotten a lot of questions on. I think understanding that it's the next frontier and a huge existential crisis that all of us are trying to grapple with, and ensuring that we're doing this in an equitable way. And so I hope that in the future, we can have something that touches a little bit more on sustainability. But as of yet, we don't have any data sources that are actively analyzing that. We do have data though, other like LPPI research that has looked at like utility burden amongst households, not just small businesses. And so to the extent that that might be helpful, I'm happy to share that in the chat as well. And I don't know if there was anything actually Misael, that if you wanted to add here.
Not at the moment. Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts or responses?
So on the subject of small businesses and climate impacts, we do a lot more. I would say that at UCLA LPPI, we end up having a lot more state level work than we do necessarily like fine-grained local work. There is an original survey that we collected about ethnic-owned businesses in California, Arizona, and Texas. And they're really long reports that delve into that data set. In particular, one of the modules for those reports looked into the like the understanding of climate change for ethnic and small businesses in California more broadly, their access to environmental plans and how ready they were for that. So those are not specific tools that you can apply, but it does at least provide you with some context for how our ethnic and small businesses in the state of California understanding climate change, if they are, and what are some of the aspects that they're like less prepared to deal with, for instance, like the climate strategies, the climate plans for their own businesses. So Gabriella has noted that in the chat. And so that's another report that I just want to flag for you. Hopefully it's useful to you. And there will be more specific follow-ups to this report with policy recommendations and tools that can be used. They're just currently in development.
Yeah, I see your hand raised, Donald.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing like the business report and the other reports. So I was just curious because I know you were saying this is it was designed for LA County, but a lot of times like different jurisdictions we can glean some other inspiration or different we can get some other help just by looking at that and seeing how we can translate it to our own jurisdictions. I am wondering, contained within those reports, because you were saying you were looking at it's like health or the business communities, that type of stuff. Are there within that actual report, are you talking also about different strategies in order to help based off of the data that you pulled for LA County that we might be able to look at that and then translate that to our own jurisdictions?
By strategies, you mean like policy recommendations for LADWP in terms of what they could be doing to better support them?
Yeah, so it's like LADWP, so different recommendations for that, or yeah, so all the policy work that we can do that we might be able to try and figure out and adopt as a version of it for that benefits our local area.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, that the report that I specifically highlighted in this presentation does speak to a number of recommendations, and I can briefly touch them too. But also, as Misael mentioned, the California brief that's more state focused is also going to be, it doesn't currently have policy recommendations, but will have its own dedicated toolkit to what could be done at a local and state level across California to improve just in that transition and the business acumen. That one has a larger breadth of work. It's not just looking at sustainability, but also looking at just how folks fared in light of COVID and transitioning to the digital age. But I think we'll definitely have a dedicated section to the green transition. In terms of key findings on LADWP specifically, there was because of the work that we were doing, which was kind of like original data sets, we found that there was just a lack of robust data when it came to really understanding energy usage, energy burden, and where small businesses were located that needed some of this priority support. And so there was a recommendation around that end, around just like doing a better job of collecting data. I know that the recommendation around collecting data is often, I think, is often emphasized a lot, because I think you need to better understand the situation to be able to address or come up with solutions. But there was also some recommendations around really thinking about more intentionally working with community-based organizations and other trusted agencies to provide better technical assistance, because there seemed to be a huge lack of awareness around LADW's piece policy and what that transition was going to look like, and a disconnect on how that would impact the local small business. And so I think there needs to be better communication strategies, and I'm sure that that's something that across the board counties are going to find with any policy that they adopt. But there are a couple others, but those are the two that I remember off the top of my head. And so if you want, feel free to reach out to me or Misael, and we're also happy to connect you with the folks on our team who worked on this report. And I'm sure that they even have more insights that they've gleaned from being on the ground with this.
Just leaving some extra space in case anyone is coming up with new thoughts or questions. But just to elevate some support in the chat, Tina Mike M. Knight elevated that this is a great tool, and thanks for sharing. Donald, go ahead.
Sorry, I tend to ask a lot of questions. For your guys' research in LA County, because I know this is definitely focused on the Latino population, but I was also wondering, were you did your work also include a lot of Native Americans who also identified as being Latino as well? So it's like, did you do that outreach with the you guys had the Tongvan population down there, the tribes down there? Were you able to work a lot with them as well, just to try and incorporate them into the population, into the your research?
Is this for the small business survey specifically, or just in general with our research?
The small business specifically, sorry. And then we'll tack onto that your research in general after that.
Yeah, so on the small business fronts, as granular as what we'd like to differentiate the data, I don't think that we actually had any Indigenous or Native American folks who are small business owners incorporated into that. I can triple check, but I think that because it's a smaller segmentation and the sampling, I don't think that we had a full, I think the representation that we had there was mostly Latino, Black, API, and then white. And then in terms of generally though, first, like definitely on the Latino Data Hub, everything where we can provide as granular of data as possible, we definitely include Native American and Alaska Native as a subcategory amongst Latinos, and also as their own segmentation of race. And then a lot of our reports also, where possible, we try to disaggregate and include Native Americans and Indigenous folks in our data sets.
If I can add to that, as Gabriela mentioned, we tend to produce as much like fine-grained data as we can, and that includes for groups that historically don't get a lot of notice, like Native Americans. The data sets we tend to use, though, are notoriously not great for estimating data for Native populations, and that has been kind of like it's based on the way that the surveys are conducted, and that has historically been an issue for a bunch of different data sets. Not only the American Community Survey, also others that use labor statistics like the Current Population Survey, which, as an example, the Current Population Survey, and they produce the monthly unemployment reports. They don't include Native Americans in their monthly employment reports because they don't have sufficient data on them. So we do our best with the data sources that are available, We don't often produce our own original research, and when we do our best. But that is also just like an issue of data quality and gathering in the United States, something that hasn't been prioritized in data collection. So it's definitely a big hole as far as like the racial equity work that's done in data.
You've mentioned it a couple of times, but there's a way to stay updated with LPPI. Could you share a link to, or maybe we can send it out in the email following up, but there's a newsletter, it sounds like.
Yeah, so there are 2 different newsletters that you can subscribe to. We can send you both those forms via email. One is for the general UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Institute newsletter. We produce one pretty frequently about new research that's coming up, work that we're doing, advocacy work that we have done. So you can subscribe for that on the UCLA LPPI website. And then there's also additionally a separate Latino Data Hub newsletter that will come out whenever there's a new update, there's new research that's published, et cetera. So you can subscribe to that on the Latino Data Hub website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see Gabriel put the newsletter one in the chat. All right, any other questions that come up or any other thoughts from the group? Okay. And maybe if thoughts or questions do come up, can we email you?
Absolutely. Let me put my email here in the chat for everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Misael and Gabriela, for sharing your work with us and the LPPI work with us. It's exciting to see everything that's going on, and I'm excited to use the Latino Data Hub and our own work at SCAG. And yeah, thank you for being here today and for sharing with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting
Thank you for
us.
having us.
I also want to thank all of the participants. I hope you found the session useful. Jennifer, could you bring up that final slide? We have a brief 2-minute survey if you'd like to help us improve future Toolbox Tuesdays. If you have your phone handy, you can scan the QR code, but we'll also pop the link in. Oh, Jeannie already did it. There's a link in the chat. We encourage you to provide feedback and questions for us to let us know what we should be covering in the future, how we can, better equip all of you to continue addressing racial equity issues in the SCAG region, so and beyond. So thank you for being here. Thank you for providing feedback. Thank you to Jennifer Martinez, who provided AV for us today, and all the SCAG staff who helped put it together. And final thank you to Gabriela and Misael for being here. Amazing presentation, amazing work. Thank you all, and hope you stay safe and healthy and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.